I saw my boyfriend liked another girl's photo on Instagram, so I spent the weekend with my ex to teach him a lesson. Main story. My relationship with Mark was always something I treated like a full-time job because in this world, if you aren't vigilant, people will take what's yours. I've always been the kind of partner who gives 110%, which includes keeping a very close eye on his digital footprint to ensure our energy remains exclusive. Mark is a decent guy, but men are naturally weak and easily distracted by the shiny, artificial allure of social media. I told him from day one that trust is a fragile vase and every like given to another woman is a hammer blow against it. He always claimed I was overreacting, but I knew I was simply protecting the sanctuary of our commitment from outside interference. We had been together for 2 years, and I felt I had finally trained him to understand that my presence is a privilege that requires absolute ocular fidelity. Everything changed last Friday night while Mark was in the shower, blissfully unaware that the universe was about to test my patience. I was doing my routine check of his following list, sorting by latest, when I saw a notification that felt like a physical slap to my face. He had liked a photo of a blonde girl, someone I had never seen before, wearing a dress that left absolutely nothing to the imagination. My heart started racing, not out of fear, but out of a deep, righteous indignation at his blatant disrespect for our boundaries. I spent the next 20 minutes refreshing her profile, watching the like count, and analyzing every pixel of her smug expression. It wasn't just a heart icon, it was a public declaration that my beauty wasn't enough to keep his thumb from wandering. I didn't confront him right then because I knew he would just use his typical, "it's just a photo" gaslighting technique to make me feel irrational. Instead, I sat there in the dark living room, vibrating with the realization that the peace in our house was a lie he had constructed. If he felt entitled to distribute his appreciation to strangers on the internet, then I was clearly undervalued in this dynamic. I realized that a mere argument wouldn't suffice. This time, he needed a lesson that would resonate in his very soul. He needed to feel the cold, sharp edge of the choice he had made by clicking that heart. I decided that if he wanted to play the field digitally, I would remind him what it looks like when I play it in the real world. Without saying a word, I packed a small overnight bag while he was distracted, watching a documentary in the bedroom. I called my ex, Leo, who has been orbiting my life for years like a loyal dog waiting for a scrap of attention. Leo was thrilled, obviously, because he knows my worth in a way Mark clearly forgot the moment he saw that blonde's post. I told Leo the first needed a place to stay and some emotional support, knowing full well what that implied for our weekend. I left a note on the kitchen counter that simply said, "Since you're so interested in what other women are doing, I've decided to see what other men are doing." I felt a surge of power as I walked out the door, finally taking control of a narrative that Mark had tried to sabotage with his reckless finger. The weekend at Leo's house was exactly what I needed to rebalance the scales of justice in my mind. Leo treated me like the queen I am, constantly complimenting my appearance and making sure I didn't have to lift a finger for anything. I didn't actually want to be there, and being in Leo's bed felt more like a tedious administrative task than a romantic getaway. But I did it for the sake of my relationship. Every time I felt a pang of guilt, I just visualized that Instagram like, and reminded myself that Mark had forced my hand. I was a martyr for our love, sacrificing my own comfort to ensure that Mark understood the gravity of his digital betrayals. It was a weekend of stoic endurance, proving that I am a woman of action who refuses to be ignored or humiliated. I spent most of Sunday night rehearsing the speech I would give when I returned, making sure to hit all the points about respect and consequences. I wanted him to see the new me, a woman who wasn't afraid to walk away the moment things got disrespectful. When I finally walked through our front door on Monday morning, I expected to see him broken, tearful, and begging for a chance to delete his account. Instead, the house was eerily quiet, and he was sitting at the dining table with a look of pure, unadulterated confusion. I didn't even let him speak. I launched right into a detailed account of how much fun I had with Leo. I told him that while he was busy liking photos, I was busy being liked in person, and that I hoped he enjoyed his little digital blonde. I described the dinners Leo bought me and the way he looked at me, making sure Mark felt every ounce of the replacement I had auditioned. I told him that this was the price of his wandering eyes and that if he ever did it again, I wouldn't bother coming back at all. Mark didn't scream or throw things, which honestly felt like another form of disrespect, as if he wasn't even bothered by my sacrifice. He just stared at me for a long time, his face going from confusion to a sort of weary, disgusted realization. He let me finish my entire manifesto of toxicity, which I had carefully crafted to be both educational and emotionally devastating. When I finally stopped to catch my breath, he reached for his phone and slid it across the table toward me. "That's my sister Sarah," he said, his voice flat and devoid of the passion I expected. "She's been living in London for the last 5 years, and she just moved back to the country 3 days ago." I froze, looking at the screen where he showed me a family photo of the two of them as kids, and then a more recent one from her graduation. The blonde girl was indeed his sister, and she was actually supposed to come over for dinner that very Sunday night to meet me for the first time. He explained that he hadn't mentioned her move yet because he wanted it to be a surprise, especially since I'm always complaining that he doesn't do romantic gestures. I stood there, the weight of the weekend with Leo suddenly feeling very heavy, but I refused to let him see me stumble. Instead of apologizing, I felt a new wave of anger wash over me because this was clearly a trap he had set. "Why didn't you tell me you had a sister who looked like a swimsuit model?" I demanded, crossing my arms to hide my shaking hands. "You purposefully kept her a secret so you could test my reaction and make me look like the bad guy." It was so typical of him to withhold vital information just so he could have the upper hand in an argument later on. He had essentially baited me into defending my honor, and now he was trying to use family as an excuse for his lack of transparency. If he had been a better communicator, none of this would have happened, and I wouldn't have been forced to spend 48 hours with an ex I don't even like. He just shook his head and started packing a bag of his own, which I found incredibly dramatic and unnecessary. He told me that the fact that I jumped to infidelity as revenge over a social media interaction was a level of insanity he couldn't live with. I followed him into the bedroom, pointing out that my reaction was a direct result of the environment of suspicion he had created. He was trying to abandon me right when I was at my most vulnerable, proving once again that he never truly cared about my feelings. As he walked out the door, he told me it was over, and that I should probably go back to Leo since we seemed to have so much in common. I watched him leave, absolutely stunned that he was willing to throw away 2 years of my hard work over a simple misunderstanding that was 90% his fault. Main story comments. Anonymous user. One says you cheated on your boyfriend with your ex because he liked his own sister's photo? You are the definition of a walking red flag. He didn't force you to do anything. You made a choice to be unfaithful because you're insecure and controlling. Ops reply, "Oh please, how was I supposed to know she was his sister?" Men use the "she's like a sister" excuse all the time to hide their side pieces. If he had actually communicated like a grown man instead of playing secret family, I wouldn't have had to protect my dignity. Anonymous user 2 says the way you talk about sacrificing yourself by sleeping with your ex is genuinely chilling. Mark didn't dodge a bullet. He dodged a nuclear warhead. I hope he finds someone who doesn't treat a relationship like a tactical battlefield. Ops reply, you clearly don't understand what it means to be in a high-stakes relationship. I didn't want to go to Leo's, but I had to show Mark that I have options. It's called setting boundaries. Maybe look it up sometime. Update 1. It has been 3 days since Mark walked out of the apartment, and the silence in this place is deafening. Mostly because he took the Bluetooth speaker I bought him. I spent the first 48 hours in a state of righteous fury, waiting for the inevitable, "I'm sorry I hid my sister from you" text that never came. Instead, I've been forced to deal with the logistical nightmare of his absence, which he clearly timed to maximize my inconvenience. He hasn't answered any of my calls, which is incredibly immature considering we still have a lease together, and he owes me for half of the groceries I bought last week. It's amazing how quickly someone can turn into a stranger just because they can't handle a little bit of accountability for their own poor communication skills. I decided to reach out to his mother Diane because she's always liked me, and surely she would understand how confusing the sister situation was. I sent her a very polite, well-reasoned message explaining that Mark and I had a misunderstanding regarding Sarah and that I hoped we could all move past it. Diane didn't respond for 6 hours, and when she finally did, it was a short, icy text telling me to never contact her or her family again. I was floored by the lack of grace. Apparently, the entire family is prone to dramatic overreactions and holding grudges over nothing. It's clear now where Mark gets his victim complex from, as they are all treating me like a villain for a situation that was essentially a comedy of errors. To make matters worse, Leo has been blowing up my phone, acting as if we are suddenly a couple again just because of one weekend. I had to explain to him very slowly that he was merely a tool for my personal growth and that our connection was strictly utilitarian. He got all emotional and started bringing up things I said during the weekend, which I told him were obviously said under duress. I'm currently surrounded by people who are incapable of understanding nuance or the pressures of being a woman in a disloyal world. I've started packing Mark's things into garbage bags because if he wants to act like I don't exist, he doesn't deserve to have his precious collectibles taking up space in my sanctuary. Update 1 comments. Anonymous user 1 says you messaged his mother to explain why you cheated. You have zero shame. The utilitarian comment about Leo is just the icing on the cake of your narcissism. Ops reply, I messaged her to clear the air because I value family, unlike Mark who keeps his hidden in London. And Leo knew the deal, he should be grateful he even got a weekend in my presence. Anonymous user 2 says packing his stuff in garbage bags after you blew up the relationship is peak toxic behavior. You're not protecting your sanctuary, you're throwing a tantrum because you got caught being a terrible person. Ops reply, it's my apartment too, and I'm not a storage unit for a man who abandons his partner over a dispute. He chose to leave, so his stuff chooses to be on the sidewalk. Update 2. 2 weeks have passed since the sister reveal, and I have spent most of that time doing the investigative work that Mark should have provided me with from the start. I've been deep diving into Sarah's Instagram, and the more I see, the more suspicious the whole reunion story feels to me. She has photos all over Europe, sure, but why did she wait until now to come back and surprise him? It feels far too convenient that she appeared exactly when Mark needed a way to make my suspicions look like madness. I'm starting to think she might not even be his full sister, or maybe she's a cousin he's trying to pass off as immediate family to make me feel guilty. I decided to post a series of very carefully curated healing photos on my own Instagram to show him that I am thriving without his baggage. I made sure to tag a few locations that I know he likes, just to remind him of what he's missing out on every single day. One of our mutual friends, Chloe, had the audacity to comment that I should take some time for self-reflection instead of posting thirst traps. I immediately blocked her because I don't need that kind of negative, judgmental energy in my life, especially from someone who stayed single for 3 years. It's fascinating how people who have never had to fight for a relationship feel so qualified to comment on how I handle mine. I also sent a check-in email to Mark's work address, since he blocked my number like a coward, asking for his new address so I could send him a bill for the damages to the apartment. I intentionally mentioned that I've been seeing a specialist for the emotional trauma his secrecy caused me, hoping he'd realize the weight of his actions. He replied with a CC to his lawyer telling me that any further contact would be considered harassment. The fact that he's bringing legal threats into a lover's quarrel shows just how desperate he is to avoid looking me in the eye. He knows that if we sat down for 5 minutes, I would dismantle his sister defense with logic, and he would have to admit he failed me. Update 2 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, Logic, you're literally theorizing that his sister is a fake, just so you don't have to admit you messed up. You are living in a completely different reality than the rest of us. Ops reply, it's called being analytical. In a world of filters and deep fakes, I'm the only one asking the real questions. If she's so real, why haven't I seen her birth certificate? Anonymous user 2 says emailing his work and mentioning emotional trauma while you're the one who cheated is insane. You're trying to manipulate him into coming back by playing the victim, and it's failing miserably. Ops reply, I'm the victim of a lack of transparency. If he had a LinkedIn for his family members, we wouldn't be here. I'm just seeking the compensation I deserve for my wasted time. Update 3. A month has gone by, and today the universe finally decided to give me the sign I needed to see through the smoke and mirrors. I was sitting at the cafe near the park, the one where Mark and I had our first date, when I saw them across the street. It was Mark and the sister, Sarah, walking together and laughing as if they hadn't just destroyed a woman's life. They were carrying shopping bags and looking entirely too comfortable for a pair that supposedly hasn't seen each other in 5 years. I watched them from behind my sunglasses, my heart pounding with the realization that they were performing for anyone who might be watching. The most jarring part was seeing her in person. She actually does look quite a bit like him, which I suppose is a clever bit of casting on his part. But the way she tucked her hair behind her ear and laughed at his jokes felt so rehearsed, like they were trying too hard to prove their sibling bond. I almost walked over there to confront them and demand a DNA test right on the sidewalk, but I restrained myself because I am a woman of dignity. I realized that Mark is using her as a shield to keep himself from having to face the reality of what he lost when he let me walk away. He's created this little family bubble to insulate himself from the guilt of driving me into the arms of another man. I took a photo of them from a distance and sent it to my group chat with the caption, "The actors are back on stage." My friends who used to be so supportive have mostly gone quiet or sent thumbs up emojis, which is a clear sign that Mark has been poisoning their minds against me. It's lonely at the top when you're the only one willing to see the truth through all the layers of deception. I spent the rest of the afternoon rewriting my final manifesto, a document that will eventually explain everything to anyone who cares about the truth. I'm not going to let him win this narrative war just because he has a blonde girl willing to play the part of Sarah for a few weeks. Update 3 comments. Anonymous user 1 says, "Clever bit of casting. You are literally suggesting he hired an actress to play his sister just to spite you. Please, for the love of everything, seek professional help." Ops reply, "You'd be surprised what people will do to win a breakup. Mark is very competitive and he knows I'm the best he'll ever have. Hiring a lookalike isn't even that expensive these days." Anonymous user 2 says, "Even your friends are ghosting you because they can see how delusional you've become. Seeing them together should have been your 'I messed up' moment, but you turned it into a conspiracy." Ops reply, "My friends are just easily manipulated by Mark's nice guy act. I'm the only one with the courage to call out a performance when I see one. The truth will come out eventually." Update 4. It's been 2 months now, and I have finally reached a place of complete and total clarity regarding the end of my relationship with Mark. I've realized that our entire 2-year bond was likely a long-term experiment he was conducting to see how much a loyal woman could endure. The sister was just the final boss in a game of psychological warfare designed to make me doubt my own instincts and reactions. I see now that my weekend with Leo wasn't a mistake at all but a premonition. My soul knew Mark was already gone, so it guided me toward a temporary sanctuary. I was never unfaithful. I was simply ahead of the curve, reacting to a betrayal that he was planning to execute via his family facade. I sent Mark one final message, a long, poetic email detailing how his lack of courage and transparency turned a beautiful love into a cautionary tale. I told him that I forgive him for using Sarah as a weapon against me, but that I can never forget the way he stood there and watched me pack my life into garbage bags. He didn't reply, which is the ultimate confirmation that he has no defense against the truth of my words. He's likely sitting in that apartment right now, staring at the empty spaces I left behind, realizing that no sister from London can ever replace the fire and intensity I brought to his boring life. He chose the easy path of family photos and likes, while I chose the hard path of truth and self-preservation. I've decided to move to a new city where nobody knows the lies Mark told about me, a place where I can start fresh with someone who understands that my jealousy is just a form of extreme devotion. I'm taking the final manifesto and turning it into a blog so other women can learn how to spot the signs of a partner who hides behind siblings to avoid accountability. I'm not a villain, and I'm certainly not toxic. I'm just a woman who loves with a ferocity that mediocre men find terrifying. Mark will spend the rest of his life looking for me in every like he gives to a stranger, while I will be busy building a kingdom where transparency is the only law. He thought he broke me, but he actually just released me from the burden of trying to save a man who was never worth my sacrifices.